Yat Eitine Masananishne. This is Navajo Grandma. Video I'm making will be for, guess what? The month of November. Now, in Navajo, November is said Nichi Ose Slender Winds. And basically for the Dine, winter has begun. Traditional winter ceremonies, activities are performed, and daylight is short and the nights are long. Sacred songs and stories are taught and learned in the hogans. Sheep can graze a few hours of daylight each day. The ewes are pregnant. They need extra feed, and they are fed dry corn stalks and alfalfa. Also, another part of November is we observe what? We are observing the Native American Heritage Month. And in November, to recognize the achievements and contributions of Native Americans. So Grandma decided to start with, guess who? The Ponca Chief Standing Bear. This is an incredible story, and Grandma and her notes. Here is Chief Standing Bear, and I'm going to read the remarkable story of Chief Standing Bear, who in 1879 persuaded a federal judge to recognize Native Americans as persons with the right to sue for their freedom. He is established as one of the nation's civil rights heroes. Here is the Ponca flag. Can you see? And Grandma sketched how beautiful their emblem is. Look how pretty. Grandma likes to draw. So we are now going to talk about the Ponca tribe and Standing Bear. And Grandma has on a chief's blanket, and it is beautiful. It's I wanted to make sure I wore one so that it's in preparation for this. It's going to be quite a long video. Standing Bear was born around 1829 in the traditional Ponca homeland near the confluence of the Niobrara and Missouri rivers. The Ponca sought and established an amicable relationship with the United States government. In 1858, they agreed to surrender all of its claimed territory with the exception of a patch of land around the Niobrara River. The move required them to shift from a nomadic lifestyle to a farming one. They realized this statement, if you don't adapt, you don't survive. Thus, they adapted white man's way. They learned to build log houses. Some converted to Christianity. They gave up hunting buffalo to grow corn and wheat. This is what Thomas Jefferson desired for the people, to live off the land. The Lakota Sioux they held on to their buffalo culture. In 1876, they had defeated Custer at the Little Bighorn, and they had no respect for tribal farmers. They would go into the cornfields and they killed the Ponca men, women, and children. And they took their scalps. They warned and said, We will not allow you to adopt the white man's ways. If you do, we will kill you. 1868, the government signed a treaty with the Lakota, giving them the Black Hills Ponca homeland, protected by treaty, which was included in the reservation. Fewer than 1,000 Ponca left rather than anger the Sioux. The government ordered the peaceful Ponca tribe to be removed and made them walk 600 miles south to a place called Indian Territory. They didn't go without a fight. Standing Bear and his brother were put in chains and put in prison, refusing to follow the white man's orders. Standing Bear said this: he had done nothing wrong. This land is mine, he said. God gave it to me. If I want to sell it, I will tell you. If you spoke to a white person and treated him like this, he would kill you. I don't want to do that kind of a thing. I don't want to fight any white person. But this land is mine. I will make it my home. Leave now. 10 days later, Standing Bear and Big Snake, his brother, were forced to join their people in the long walk into the unknown. There were stories that when they went to the village, the soldiers would grab the children, all the little children, by their braided hair, and they would just throw them with their hair into the moving wagons through the village. And a lot of the Ponca said, if we had had guns, we would have used them. Nonetheless, they were forced to walk with no clothing to take with them. No wagon, no horse, nothing. They walked day and night for a 55-day journey. It was cold, it was wet, through overflowing rivers. When they came to a town called Neely, Nebraska, a baby girl, white buffalo, died. And the Indian agent went to find a carpenter just to make a wooden cross for her. On May 24th, they had a gravesite ceremony and a burial for her at the knoll at the top of Laura Hill Cemetery that overlooked the Elkhorn River Valley. The grieving father, Black Elk, asked the townspeople to take care of his white buffalo girl, to treat her like their own. For 131 years, the townspeople honored that pledge. Soon after, Standing Bear lost his own daughter. She died June 6th. Her name was Prairie Bear, or Prairie Flower. She died of tuberculosis and was given a Christian burial in the town of Milford, Nebraska. Thus, the death of his daughter left an orphan grandson to raise. They continued south through tornadoes, and they said the spirits were angry and the end of the world was coming. July 9th, the Ponca arrived at their new reservation in Oklahoma. The land was hot, it was bleak, it was impossible to farm, it was rocky and barren, and they said it was nothing like home. 1/3 of the Ponca died that year from malaria, hunger, and exhaustion. They built a cemetery on a hill in 1890, the only hill. The people were lonesome for their homelands, their ancestral ways, that when they died, they would be facing north to their homelands back in Nebraska. Back in Oklahoma Indian Territory, the Ponca people were getting desperate. They wanted to return to their homelands. November 1877, Standing Bear took a train to Washington, D.C., and with an Indian delegation. They saw the life of the white people and like they had never known before. They met with Rutherford B. Hayes. He was the president at the time in the White House. As one of the chiefs said, I was then taken up by a whirlwind. Now we are all perishing. Their stories shocked the president, and the Indian agent they found out the Indian agent was not reporting the information, and there was bad intelligence, and because of that, thousands and thousands of people had died. The chiefs left D.C. with gifts and the promise from the president to help them. But the president had no intention of letting them return to Nebraska. The official policy of the United States government was to fill every Indian territory with as many Indians as possible. That winter, Standing Bear's eldest 17-year-old son came down with malaria. And basically, when he was dying, he asked his father to make him a promise to bury his body by the banks of the Niobrara River. This was his own homeland, and he wanted his bodies to be taken home. The night of 1879, Thomas Tibbles, a reporter, was visited by a Commander General George Crook, a famed Indian fighter. He was trusted by the Indians and never minced his words, a bitter enemy, but the Indians respected him. He said, "I was forced to do the most inhumane thing ordered by Washington in dealing with the Indians, but now I am ordered to go even to do something more crueler than I had ever been asked before. I would resign my position if it would prevent the order from being executed, but it would not." Sunday morning, with the words of the general ringing in his ears, Tibbles ran 4 miles to General Crook's prisoners at the fort. He saw 3 lodges. Inside, 29 men and children were sick, despondent, ill, hungry, to be rounded up, to be taken back to the Indian Territory. It was a death sentence. Through an interpreter, Standing Bear told Tibbles our 17-year-old son to bury him back near the Niobrara River. Back in January 1890, Standing Bear and his small clan had left Indian Territory, traveling unseen 600 miles during journey to Nebraska. What they were doing was illegal, so they kept out of sight. They walked, they scavenged corn in the fields. The white people along the way gave them bread, coffee, and flour. In March, on a cold morning, the ragged band of Ponca had arrived in Omaha, Nebraska. 60 days with no food, a few days away from home. They rested to recover when General Crook sent his soldiers to arrest them to take them back to Fort Omaha, or to take them to Fort Omaha. The plight of the Ponca was printed in the papers in Omaha, featuring a quote from a medicine man, Buffalo Chip. He said, "I have been told since the Great War all men were free men, and that no man can be made a prisoner unless he does wrong. I have done no wrong, yet I am here a prisoner. Have you a law for white men and a different law for those who are not white?" The power of the press changed everything. Religious leaders of Omaha, Christians and Jewish alike, rallied around Standing Bear. They sent a telegraph to Washington, D.C., asking the president to set the Ponca free. The Omaha tribe petitioned the United States government to allow the Ponca to come and live with them. "They are our mothers, our sisters, our uncles, cousins, and although they are called savages, we are willing to share with them what we possess, if only they could be allowed to return." Nobody had anything but good to say about them. Everyone understood why they were going, where they were going, because they saw the coffin there in the wagon. General Crook overlooked the Ponca in the lodges below, and this is what came to him. He decided he was going to find a way, and maybe the only opportunity he would have, to do the right thing. May 1st, 1879, Weeks of paper publicity and secret plans had paid off. At the District Court of Omaha, Nebraska, an amazing trial is about to take place. An Indian chief is suing the Army general for his freedom. Many came as they read about Standing Bear in the newspapers and wanted to see. General Cook and Thomas Tibble had engineered a trial as a way to free his Ponca prisoners. Until then, General Cook had only believed you had to defeat the Indians, then lift them to integrate into society. But the Standing Bear case showed him an alternative. The question was, who are these people and what do we do about them? After the Civil War, the United States Constitution granted citizenship to those born in the United States except the Indians. No 14th Amendment. General Cook realized these people who have no rights under the law are the original owners of this soil. Standing Bear had attracted powerful allies among the whites and Indians. Joseph LaFlesche, chief of the Omaha tribe, sat in the courtroom with his daughter Suzette. Her Omaha name was Bright Eyes. She was educated in the East, spoke fluent English, and she had a role in the eventual crusade for justice. Two prominent attorneys in Omaha, John Webster and A.J. Poppleton, was the chief counsel for the Pacific Railroad, offered to defend Chief Standing Bear pro bono. They were top attorneys in Nebraska. It was significant to take on this case and would influence the court and everyone. Standing Bear entered the courtroom, dressed as a chief, with a wide belt of beads at his waist and a necklace of grizzly bear claws. Around his shoulder, a blanket of vivid red streamed with blue stripes. This was his council blanket, which he wore when he was to speak officially for his people. There was no jury. The federal court judge, Dundee, was to decide the case. The question before the judge was simple. Standing Bear had been arrested for leaving his reservation. Did he have the right to challenge his imprisonment? Did he have the right to habeas corpus? It doesn't say anything about a citizen. Only any person can file for the writ of habeas corpus. The question before the judge is, Standing Bear a person? Not a Christian. He was human, but deserving the same right as a white person does. He shouldn't have to prove that because he and his people were born in this land long before the white people came to this land. Standing Bear, sitting in the witness chair, argued he had been long walking the white man's road. He was a farmer. He had built a log house. He had even become a Christian. His descendants say this. Standing Bear accepted Christianity because it encompassed all the teachings his people had. He proved he could still be civilized and still be Ponca. He didn't want handouts or welfare. All he wanted to do was go home, to be a self-sufficient farmer. Thus, in the courtroom, hours passed. The attorneys argued the law that Standing Bear didn't understand. Finally, he had enough and said, "You brought me here. What have I done? It seems in this world I have nothing." Then, for 2 days, the judge adjourned the court. Thomas Tibbles wrote in his journal, Standing Bear asked to make a final statement. Standing Bear held out his hand. And he paused for a moment, and then he spake directly to the judge. My hand is not the same color as yours. If I pierce it, I shall feel pain. If you pierce your hand, you too will feel pain. The blood that flows will be the same color. I am a man. The same God made us both. When he finished, there was a fairly long hushed silence. Then you began to hear some sobbing, crying from the back of the courtroom. The judge was emotionally overcome, and General Crook rushed up over to Standing Bear to shake his hand. Standing Bear was saying to the court, I am a human being. Respect me. The whole key to the whole thing, the matter of respect. Judge Dundee adjourned the court on a warm spring evening. The judge spent the next 10 days pondering his decision. What actually or exactly did it mean to be a person? He went to the Webster Dictionary and read, find a person as a living soul, that is a self-conscious being, etc. This was comprehensive enough to him, and it would seem to include even an Indian. Standing Bear had convinced the judge he was no longer a ward of the government, a free man entitled to the 14th Amendment with rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Standing Bear defeated a United States general of the United States Army in a federal courtroom. Standing Bear thanked the attorneys who defended him. To A.J. Poplin he gave a sacred headdress. To John Webster he presented his engraved tomahawk. I found a better way, he said. Then Standing Bear fulfilled a promise to his son and buried him at the banks of the Niobrara River. Standing Bear did pay a price, though, for his victory. He left his people. The government wouldn't let him go back to the Indian Territory in Oklahoma. It was illegal. Neither could he go to Nebraska, to his homeland, as it was now owned by the Lakota, and he could be arrested. Once again, Thomas Tibble came to the rescue. They decided to go on a crusade to the east. The fall of 1879 in the cities. They stayed in legendary hotels, ate like a white man, dined with anti-slavery movement members. October 29th, word came to the Boston Hotel that Standing Bear's brother, Big Snake, who was not free, had been trading horses with the Cheyenne and arrested as he had no 14th Amendment rights. He was imprisoned and a scuffle had broken out. He was shot between the eyes. The same day, word came to Tibbles that his wife had died suddenly, leaving 2 daughters. Standing Bear told him, we both suffer. All those who suffer and die in the strange land, they need us. We've come too far to quit now. December 1879 in Steinway Hall, New York City, people came to hear Standing Bear and Bright Eyes. Helen Hunt Jackson later wrote a book of injustice toward the Indians. With the 3-month crusade, Standing Bear grew really, really tired of being a model Indian with regalia. He went to a barber shop, cut his hair, and bought himself a suit. He returned to Nebraska, and Tibbles married Bright Eyes and continued the crusade for Indian rights. Standing Bear's case was taken to the Supreme Court to finally allow the Indians to declare citizenship of the United States. The government dropped it. In 1924, Native Americans were granted citizenship. Standing Bear went to Nebraska, homeless, and he settled on an island on the Niobrara River, the tiny remnant of the Ponca homeland claimed by no one. He was alone, and his life was, the question was, his life and the case relevant? Yes, he said, is living profound in the present not in the past. Late in the summer of 1890, 11 years after the federal judge set him free, and with nowhere to go, Standing Bear received an allotment of land, 29 acres on the west bank of the Niobrara River. He died there in 1908. His story was not over in the lives of those who followed. In 1962, Congress took the final step and terminated the Northern Ponca tribe. Later in 1990, Congress restored the tribe, and the Northern and the Southern Ponca celebrated in a powwow as they became one. The reservation was back, and the people were back. Standing Bear was the first Native American to win civil rights when he made his eloquent speech in the federal court that all men are equal. Eventually, the chief Standing Bear, they had created a memorial bridge over the Missouri River that connects to the running water, South Dakota, with the Niobrara, Nebraska. I wanted to read this to you, and it is a long read, and I hope you listened, because this is powerful. And I salute the dignity of Standing Bear and his people, the Ponca tribe, and what they went through and what they continued to go through until they were able to receive their their recognition again. And I hope that you understand how important these stories are and how the people suffered. And the one thing that I was so impressed with Standing Bear is that he said, this is his question, what does it mean to be a person? In the footsteps of Standing Bear, it means to suffer and survive. His descendants' last words were basically, we always win because we are intact. Our spirits are whole. We have posterity that depend on us to be strong and to create a way in this world. And we will do that through our language and our culture. I hope you enjoyed this video and see how important each tribe is and their suffering and how they persevered through their struggles, and that they are our ancestors. We are one family, but we have all had our long walk. We have all had our pain. We have all suffered and yet still do. But without prayer, without going to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, a lot of this, basically, He is the healer, to heal our hearts and not to hang on to the past. Look to the future. There are still celebrations when Black Elk, the father, had buried his daughter, that the celebrations still continue and carry on after all these years. It's so incredible to watch the Ponca, the Northern Ponca, go and make food and feed these people, and how wonderful of friendships that have never died, and the pledge that they kept for all these years. I hope we all can keep our pledge to be good people and to love one another, to pray for each other. This is my video for the month. This is Native American Month. And again, thank you. Grandma loves you. Hagone.